Well, hey there, everyone. Welcome back to COM. Today, we're going to do a little lesson on evaluating internet sources. So, how do we choose great sources and not fake news and not very weak sources? And we'll end this lesson with a bit of an instruction on how to use our library's journal databases. If you don't know what a journal is, it's a fantastic, very reputable research tool that you can use. Our library pays a lot of money to access it, and it's a great tool for you in your academic journey. So, let's get into it. So what happened when I was in university in the year 2000s, about right, sure, let's say that. So I would go to the library, like physically go to the library, and you might look for the call number of a book, right? And I've got the old card system here. When I was a kid, they had those in libraries. When I was in university, they did have electronic search, but it used to be that all of these you would search for books like in the stacks of cards to tell you where it is. Then you would sign out the book, and then you'd probably lose the book and have to get charged for that. So luckily, it's very much easier today, right? We have the internet, this wonderful web of knowledge. It's got billions and billions of articles and books and scanned information. Now, there's not a lot of older stuff. I mean, I'm gonna have to guess, but I'm gonna say not even half of the books that have ever been published would be on the internet that you could actually look at them and read them. So, there's still a value to going to the library, but for our purposes, the internet's going to be your very close friend for getting usable research information for your research paper, right? However, I want to say that many students make the mistake of just using internet sources, right? They go find a website, it's got the information that they think they need, and they don't go and look at books or they don't look at journal articles. It's a bit of a mistake. I'm hoping you will actually use some. Okay, I know it's hard to get a book now from Fanshawe's library because it's not as accessible, but there are other reputable sources you can use, including Fanshawe's website, the library website, which we'll get into. So why bother evaluating sources, right? Here's the reason, because when you Google search something, Google's not telling you if the article is quality. The reason that article is at the number one in the search is because someone was good at SEO, right? Search engine optimization. They knew what to do to tell Google's algorithm, which is just a computer program, that this is valuable information. But that doesn't mean a human has reviewed it to say this is valuable, credible, or relevant. So you really need to use your own brain to figure out, is this source relevant? And if it's not, well, you probably don't want to use it, right? Okay, so yes, we're looking for three things. We're looking for material that's informative. I'm going to tell you something. Authoritative. It's from someone who actually knows what they're talking about, including an organization. And it's reliable. It's not something that's going to change or have changed already. For example, so here's why I like books and journal articles. Or even magazine articles. It's hard to get these things published. Not anyone can just publish a magazine article on their blog. If you want to get into a reputable magazine, you have to kind of know what you're talking about. So there's no Joe Blow or Jane Blaine, articles in a reputable magazine like The Economist or in the New England Medical Journal, right? We don't want to use uninformed, illegitimate information in any of our research reports, right? Or in a job in the future in your work, right? You want to make sure you're using excellent sources. So that's why we evaluate. So what are we looking for? Authority. Who's responsible for this site, the internet site, or the book or the journal or whatever it is? You can look for their credentials. Do they have a PhD in this subject? If so, they probably studied it for a long time. Are they experts in the field? Have they been doing this for decades? Who is the author? Do they have a bias, or are they known for and have a reputation for being objective? And is there any contact information? If you can't find the author or how to get a hold of them to ask follow-up questions, that might suggest that they maybe are not an authority on the subject. And we all know that the URL type, so the ending part, the two little words, .edu is an educational institution like Fanshawe. It's not used all the time, but it suggests something. .org is usually a nonprofit, can be something else. .gov is usually an American government website, or in Canada we have gc.ca, right? governmentofcanada.ca. So you know that's a government website, which is usually has some level of authority and objectiveness, right? What about Wikipedia? Is that an authority on the subject? I mean, look, it's a fantastic tool, which I love. So, should you be using Wikipedia? I don't know. Let's think about that. What is Wikipedia? So here's what they say on their own website. Wikipedia is an encyclopedia. Fantastic. It contains a lot of knowledge. Written collaboratively, which means together, by many of its readers. Interesting. So if it's written by the readers, are they credible? Do they have authority? Maybe, maybe not. It's using a wiki that makes collaboration easy. So lots of people are updating these Wikipedia entries. It's not one person. It's usually a few small little percentage of the people that actually use Wikipedia are contributing to it, maybe 1%, 2%. But those people can be anybody. They don't have to be academics. They don't have to be experts. I had a friend of a friend who really had it out for this one musician. I forget who now, but he hated this guy, right? And so he would go to this musician's Wikipedia page, and every once in a while, just when he's bored, insert some really interesting and false and insulting information, right? And inevitably, someone would catch it and take it out. But for a while, that information, the erroneous information, was up there. So that's what you get when you use Wikipedia. You don't know if it's good information, right? Keeping on here. Why do profs hate Wikipedia? And it's not that we hate it all the time, but we hate the way that students use it sometimes. Students, we want students to use this as kind of like a starting point or like a sampler tray, right? Whereas students use it sometimes like the buffet. We're having our whole meal on Wikipedia, right? If you're doing that, not a good thing. We don't want to use to fill ourselves up on Wikipedia, right? But Wikipedia has a really excellent feature, and on most, if not all, articles, you've got the references section at the bottom, right? So there's the article itself with all the information, and then usually you'll notice in the text there'll be a little number, right, like a footnote, and that'll have a link, which will link you down to the bottom references section here. So look at this article for carrots. You have 18 references, which are fantastic, right? Now, don't assume that all of these references are legitimate or have authority. Some of them might be crap, right? But look at this: BBC News, U.S. Patent Office. We've got Snopes, so they investigate what do you call those? Conspiracy theories, etc. Nature.com. There's some seemingly good, relevant, authoritative references here, right? They've used their research to create the carrot entry on Wikipedia. So by all means, use Wikipedia as a starting point, but then go to the references section of that article and find the more academic information, right? And here's a good example of what I was talking about with my friend. This guy who's a Dublin University student, he posted a poetic but phony quote on Wikipedia. This, it was a French composer died, and so he went right onto the Wikipedia page and concocted this fake quote by this French composer, right? Well, Wikipedia eventually figured out that this was false. There was no attribution. Like, where did this quote come from? So they removed this quote that this guy put up there as a joke, right? Unfortunately, the media got a hold of this and they pulled the quote and they published it in their papers or on their online forums, and nobody noticed, right, for a month. So eventually they published a correction, but the damage was done. And so this is a great example of why Wikipedia is not to be trusted in all cases, right? It's a starting point. It's not an authoritative source like a physical encyclopedia would be, right? Next, what we're looking for in our research, this is another way to evaluate your sources. Objectivity, which means basically, do you have a bias or not? If you're objective, usually you're seeing all sides, you don't have much of a bias. So what are you looking for? Bias. Is the author clearly a supporter of one political party or another? Are they clearly in favor of one philosophy or another? Do they have an agenda? Are they publishing this information to make you do something or make you believe something? Does the article or the website have a statement of purpose? If their purpose is to get you to convert to Scientology, that's probably not an objective source about Scientology. Who's the intended audience? Is it for Is it for a knowledgeable audience that, maybe the quality of information will be higher, or is it for a new audience? Is the information presented as factual, or is it an opinion? They might tell you themselves, hey, this is just an opinion. And in that case, you might not want to use this as authoritative information. Is it primary or secondary in origin? So there's really two types of research. There's primary, where you're going directly to the source. So this would be like an interview with the person. It would be you doing your own experiment on something. And then there's secondary, which means basically you're getting it from a book, right? You're going to be doing almost exclusively secondary research in your college journey. And does the source disclose any kind of sponsorship or underwriting? A lot of, maybe not a lot, but definitely too many medical studies are funded by certain pharmaceutical companies. And they're researching the drug that the company sells. Is that an objective study? Probably not, almost certainly not. If you're taking money from a company to research a drug that that company produces, you're probably going to say good things about them. Even if you think you're objective, there is a bias working in the background. We're human beings, we can't help but be biased, right? Everyone has a bias. You can't eliminate it completely, it's not possible. So be careful if there's a sponsorship or someone's underwriting this. Here's an example, beefnutrition.org. Sounds like a great place to learn about beef, right? Except that this is funded by Beef Checkoff, which is copyright 2015, the Cattlemen's Beef Board and National Cattlemen's Beef Association. Non-objective source. Automatically, we know that they're pushing beef on people, which, good or bad, it is a biased source, right? You might be able to use this if they have, objective facts like the amount of beef that people eat. Great, that's a fact. You can't make that up, right? Well, maybe you'd fudge it. Anyway, the point is, be careful about using information that is funded by or an organization with an agenda. Another example here. What is this site called? Martin Luther King Discussion Forum. So here's a historical examination of Martin Luther King, right? The leader that was killed in the United States. Okay, interesting. So maybe you're writing a research paper on MLK, but you want to be careful because this is hosted by Stormfront. What is Stormfront? They're a white pride organization, right? Neo-Nazis, basically. You definitely don't want to rely on information about a black civic leader from a white pride organization, okay? This is an example of a website that would not be objective, okay? And probably not authoritative at all. Next thing we're looking for is accuracy in our sources, right? Is this document fact-checked? Is it well-researched? You might not know off the top of just reading it, but you can get a sense for these things after you've done research for a while, right, as a student. You start to get a BS detector after a while, right? And so if there's no documentation, AKA proof, then maybe it's not an accurate source, right? Do these facts that are being presented line up with things you've read other places? If not, we got to ask ourselves why. Why? Is this information accurate? If you see that, a statistic that is on 3 websites as 10%, and this other website gives it as 15%, it might not be accurate. So here, stopglobalwarming.org, an average car in the United States driven 10,000 miles in 1 year releases 5.5 tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Okay. Is this accurate? It might be, but we also have to note that this is a climate change organization, right? So look, hopefully no climate change deniers in the class, but this is a biased organization. Whether we agree with it or not, there's a bias, right? And so we want to double check maybe from another source, probably a government source would be objective on this, whether this stat is accurate or not. Currency. We're not talking about money here. We're talking about, is it current? Is it dated? There's usually like a date on an article when it was published. There might be a date that the website was updated. And do all the links work? If they're not, someone probably hasn't looked at this website for a while, and you might say, oh, it's not current. Now look here, the Ombudsman Association, right? Ombudsman is usually an organization that's a watchdog for something or other. Last updated, 2005. That's not current at all. So we might be using out-of-date information if we pull this information, right? However, currency doesn't really matter when we're talking about historical facts. That those generally don't change unless they find new information. It doesn't change for facts, statistics, anything from the past, right? So in that case, currency probably doesn't matter. But if we're talking about the latest research on fashion, then a website from 2005 is not going to be helpful at all because that changes. All right, now we're into the part about journals, and I don't mean what you write in the evening before you go to bed. I don't mean Kurt Cobain's journal or anyone else's. I mean there's something called a journal, and it's usually like a magazine but maybe longer, and it's a collection of published studies usually, or articles from well-respected academics. These are people who have studied this maybe through their whole life. They have maybe a PhD. They're knowledgeable people on a certain subject, right? And the great thing about journals, the reason that I love them and think that they're very robust sources is that they're usually peer-reviewed. Peer-reviewed means that the peer review process differs per journal, but usually means there are two other academics knowledgeable in the field who read your article before it's published, and they say, yeah, this is legitimate. They've done the research in a proper way. It makes sense, and there are no sort of glaring errors in the research, right? That's why peer review is so important. And most journals, I think, are peer reviewed. This is fantastic. So let me talk about this. So one of the oldest is the New England Journal of Medicine. When was this published? Established in 1812, right? Fantastic. That is probably the most well-respected medical journal in the world. If you can get published in here, you have probably a very groundbreaking study that you've conducted on something to do with health and medicine, right? Our library actually has access to many, many electronic databases for journals, right? I talked about peer-reviewed. Yeah, the function of the journal is to distribute knowledge, not to make money. So here's the difference between a journal and a magazine. Magazine is usually sold for money, right? People have a subscription, or they go and pick one up in the airport. That's the magazine has an incentive to sell magazines. Whereas a journal, they're not in it to make money. They're usually not for profit, and you still have to pay for them. In fact, quite a lot of money. Our library pays a lot of money to access these journals. If you want to buy some of these articles, like a single article, it can run you $30, $40, $50, right? Now, most people don't go out and buy those, but a lot of academic institutions like Fanshawe have paid for a subscription to these databases, right? They're very expensive, they're very valuable. You have free access to them, you should use them, right? So the purpose of these journals is to distribute knowledge, not make money. There you go, they're lower bias automatically, right? And I've talked about peer review. Libraries pay thousands of dollars, yes, please use them. Okay, let's get started. So I'm gonna show you exactly step-by-step how to use Fanshawe's journal database system. I know that not a lot of people, including professors, know about this, but it's extremely helpful to find good quality sources. It's very easy to use, so let's go step by step. All right, so you're gonna hit up the Fanshawe Library website first, fanshawelibrary.com. You're gonna click on databases A to Z when you get there, sorry, A to Z, since we're Canadian. Scroll down and click on Academic Search Ultimate, right there, third one down. I think it's still like that. You can use others too, but that's the best one that I found, the most comprehensive. Then it's going to give you a search screen. Yeah, you want to log in with your WebAdvisor info at the login screen. And then you can choose a few databases. So which ones do we want to choose? All right. So Academic Search Complete, that's a good one. Applied Science and Tech, Artful. There's so many that you can choose, right? Now, I don't honestly know what all of these are, but you can just kind of play around with it. Choose all of them if you want, and it'll search everything we have. So something like military and government collection, probably if you're researching like audio equipment, that won't be helpful. Don't check it. Health, that won't be helpful for choosing a microphone. So you can check which ones you want. Academic search complete might be good enough. And then we want to do an advanced search, right? We want to sort of put in some filters. So click on advanced search, and you're going to come up with this. So let's say, just for sake of argument and my own interests, you're going to search for video games, okay? This works just like Google. You can see it's a little more complicated. You want to limit your results to full text. If you don't, you're going to get abstracts, which is only like a summary of the article. Not helpful for you usually. You probably want to do peer-reviewed journals so that they're high quality. And then you're going to click search. Okay, that comes up with 1,913 journal articles. Wow, that's pretty amazing. Like, there's a lot of research happening in video games, apparently. Yeah, it might be too many. You could start clicking down through the list, or you might want to refine your search. So maybe we're doing a paper on video games and violence, so we'll put that term in there, right? Okay, now it's 119 results, much more manageable, right? We don't want to read all of those sources, but we can like search through the headlines for the ones that are most relevant, right? And then you can literally just click on them and open them up and read them. So here's one that we opened: video game playing and academic performance in college students. Ooh, that would be an interesting read. Okay, what do you want to do here? You want to read the abstract, which is just a summary. And then you can get the full text if you think it's helpful, right? I mean, you might read the abstract and say, no, this is not what I'm looking for. Go back and try a different one, different entry. But if you do like it and you're going to use some of this information, here's a shortcut. You can click on Cite, and it's going to start to create a works cited page for you, or in other words, a references page, right? Which is your APA references page at the end of your research paper. Hopefully you've done APA before. We're going to learn about that in the next video. Then you can scroll down and find MLA citations. So, we're going to prefer APA in this course, and Fanshawe generally prefers APA, which is just a type of, it's a standard for citing your works. MLA is another one, almost as popular. You can just format this to APA very easily, just copy paste it. Okay, so then once you've pasted that into a Word document, do it like this. And we'll talk about this a little bit more, but basically you want either at the top works cited or references centered. Then you've got the author's information. If there's multiple, you add them. And then the second line of every entry, you're indenting by one tab, right, or five or seven spaces. And there's a format for this. There's a format for each type, like a book, a website, a YouTube video. Different formats. We'll get into that next video. But basically, here's the start of your works cited page, right? Which is very handy. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? So this has been a bit of a quick overview on how to find sources and evaluate them and tell if they're good or bad. If you have questions about that, email me. I'm going to do a video next on how to actually cite your sources and create your in-text citations and your APA works cited page. Okay? Thanks for watching, and we'll pick this up in another video.